So I thought I would just say a few things to start today's conversations, because Daniel approached us earlier this year when he decided that he was going to stage this event. And myself, my colleague Phil, we run the Pathways into Music Foundation together. And we were super interested in the topic that Daniel had raised and the conversations that he wanted to organize as part of his conference, which is why we then partnered on the event, because it very much connects to the work that we are doing. I'm going to tell you more about that in a moment. But it takes the work we are doing and then really runs with it and moves into territories where we have not previously worked. So actually, although I'm going to talk to you for 5 minutes now, I'm really here today to learn, because I think there's a lot of information from the speakers and the panelists and just the people in the room about how we can help Daniel and his team sort of achieve what he wants to achieve, both here in Northampton and in the Midlands, but then across the UK and beyond. So I guess if we begin with this question, I think this for me is sort of the starting point of today's conversations. So what it says there is, we know that music and local music scenes and local music industries can have a positive impact on young people living in challenging circumstances and disadvantaged communities. Because if we look back at the history of music and various different genres of music, from folk through to punk through to hip hop and all the various manifestations of hip hop, there have been many scenarios which in certain communities, people have been able to rally around music and music making, become entrepreneurial in their music, and in doing so, create a tight community, create opportunities, and ultimately create a business. And with that business, they can create a career. So this does happen organically and has happened at various times over history organically, but in a very random fashion, in very specific places at very specific times. And I guess what we're interested in today is how can we, and by we, I mean the music industry, I mean music education, I mean society at large, how can we encourage and facilitate this process to use music and music making to build communities and in those communities create opportunities? How can we make that opportunity more widely available? I think if we were to brainstorm some moments in history where music brought a community together and on the back of that an industry was created, a lot of that would be stories about London and New York and big cities around the world. And less often in sort of second tier cities and certainly less often in sort of the big towns and once you get into the rural area. Is there a way of us facilitating this more widely? And when it does happen and when it does work, how can we ensure that the people involved in building that community fairly benefit from what they have created? Because again, if we were to go back through history and look at moments when music really brought a community together and created an industry, we would probably also have a story about how certain individuals really benefited and certain individuals got left behind, and maybe that the corporates of the music industry and the media industry came in, hoovered up the benefits, took them away, and did the actual community that began it truly benefit. So these are some of the things that I'm interested in today's conversations. So just to tell you a bit about the work of the Pathways into Music Foundation and how it fits in. So we've been working for about 5 years now on various programs which are all about bringing connections between the music industry and music education. That's what the Pathways into Music Foundation is all about. Because we want to ensure that any young person who has a passion for music and wants to pursue a career in music, whether that is as a frontline artist up front on stage, as a musician in the studio or in the band, or within the industry, that everybody has access to the knowledge and information and support that they need to have a go at pursuing a career in music. Not everybody can be a superstar artist. We know that. That's not what we're about. We're about giving everybody the opportunity to try to be the next superstar artist, if that is what they want, but also to build skills, development, contacts along the way that allow them to build careers and businesses in music and more widely in culture so that they can have a sustainable career, whatever it is that they are doing. And we see music education, even though traditionally music education has rightly been more focused on the art of music making, on performance and production and composition, and it rightly so, but that in that environment, we also have a little bit of a focus on the entrepreneurial side of music, of how the industry works and what knowledge and information you need in order to pursue a career. And in order to do that, we've been doing a lot of joining the dots, because we feel in order to get the information out to young people about pursuing a career in music, lots of different companies, people, organizations, which in their own right are doing great things, need to be working together. We need to join the dots of all these organizations. The music industry, those of you who work in the industry will know, the music industry has lots of strands to it, lots of silos. You've got the record labels, you've got the music publishers, you've got the venues, you've got the tour promoters, you've got the managers, and everybody's operating in their own little space, and they don't necessarily understand what is happening in the rest of the business. Even if you look at a company like Sony or Universal or Warner, who are both record labels and music publishers, and yet the label side of the business around recorded music and the publishing side of the business around songwriting don't necessarily talk to each other. They don't necessarily understand each other. So part of what we've been doing is helping people understand all the different strands of the music industry and how they fit together. And then all the different strands of education. Education in its widest possible sense, from what is happening in school and college and university and the exam boards, but also the talent development programs, the youth organizations, the studios and venues who run programs for young people who are passionate about music, the online initiatives, the band labs and the other tools of this world that can bring people together around the world. So we've been trying to understand all the different strands of the industry, all the different strands of education, and how we can join the dots between them. We've also been mapping music careers. So we've broken down the average career of a frontline artist, a pop star, into 10 steps. And we talk about that everybody begins in what we call the DIY phase. Every artist today starting out begins by releasing music, putting on their own shows, which means that an artist in that early phase is also a label, is also a publisher, is also a promoter, is also an agent, and trying to give people the knowledge and skills they need to understand what that means. And then we break the career down into the hobbyist, the DIY phase, the momentum builder, as people start to interact with the music industry. But of course, not everybody will be a frontline artist. Many people will become what we call a portfolio musician, where they start working in the studio, or they create beats for other artists who then use those beats to release tracks, or they're in bands and they go on tour with other artists. And of course, there are all the careers in the industry, making sure people understand all the different career routes, whether you go the label route, the publishing route, the live route, etc. So, at Pathways into Music, we've been doing lots of mapping. There's some books on the table that has lots of information about everything that I have just said. But ultimately, what we're trying to do here is to signpost to young, passionate, creative people what the career pathways are for music makers, what the career pathways are within the music industry, and what knowledge and information and resources they should have access to in order to go on those career journeys. And we want to join the dots between all the different strands of the music industry, all the different strands of education, and between industry and education and the resources that are available. So me and Phil have been on this massive journey trying to map the industry, map education, map careers, map resources, and then do an awful lot of joining the dots between all of those different things. We want to join the dots so that young people can identify the support they need in order to progress their career and work out where to go next. We want educators whose passion is making music, performing music, composing music, to just have the access to that basic knowledge about copyright, about streaming, about marketing and fan base building, about putting on a live show, not so that they are experts in those things, but so they can signpost the information for young people. And we want everybody involved in this process, when you're working with and supporting, mentoring, teaching young people, to always have in your mind, what next? How much can I do to support this young person? And when they've got all they can get out of me, where am I sending them to go on a journey? Because no one company, no one organization, no one college, no one person can provide everything that a young person needs. So how do we take people on that journey? So that is what the Pathways into Music program has been about. And the reason why, when Daniel got in touch, we were really interested in this program is often when we're talking about connecting industry and education, although we're defining education in its widest possible word, widest possible term, Obviously, it's easiest when we're talking about schools and the education hubs that support the schools. It's easiest when we're talking about FE colleges and HE colleges. But what about all of the young people who fall out of that system? Daniel talked about NEETs, not in education, employment, or training. How do we reach those young people? Who has the relationships with those young people that we can work with in order to pass that information along? What other people, institutions, initiatives do we need to connect with and support and to bring in our map as we join all of these dots? So that is what I am hoping I will learn from today's session. So we've got lots of presentations, we've got lots of panel discussions, we've got lots of interviews as we go. But we're going to begin by getting Daniel to come back up on stage. He gave you a very little introduction to In Music in Media at the start. But we thought it would be good, given that a lot of this has grown out of Daniel's work with his organization and with Musically Unorthodox, to basically tell you the story so far and how we got here today. So I'm going to pass back to Daniel